What is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is, of course, your favorite Shogun here, Sugi, and today I'm gonna be reviewing Dragonball Daima for its entirety, and yes, there will be spoilers included on this review. And for those who don't know, Daima is not a prequel to Dragon Ball Super. Daima, just like GT and Super, are their own separate universes, which are all serving as their own sequel stories to the original Dragon Ball Z series. And there has been this copium coming out from the community who are saying that Daima will be retconned into Super, which would be actually pretty great. This is what everybody wanted originally, that these two stories would be connected to each other, but that's not what we got, and saying otherwise is pure copium. This is how Dragon Ball as a franchise has been for quite some time. We had plenty of movies which haven't been canon. We had spin-off shows before, like GT. This is just the way things are. Now, for those who are wondering, what show should I watch before watching Daima, I would say watching Dragon Ball Z. If you are low on time, you could just watch the Majin Buu saga, as it's most closest to the lore of Daima's story. Now let's talk about the premise of Daima. So the story revolves around this new demon king in the demon world who is looking how Goku and the Z Fighters were able to defeat Majin Buu, and he sees them as a clear threat because they were able to defeat this, massive monstrosity. So what they basically do is that they collect the Dragon Balls and basically turn Goku and the Z Fighters into kids. And then basically to prevent them from collecting the Dragon Balls again, they basically capture Dende and bring Dende into the demon world. And then after Goku, Piccolo, Vegeta, and Bulma and Supreme Kai basically venture into the demon world to save Dende and restore their bodies. So that is basically the premise of this whole show. And the series is only 20 episodes, which makes it basically the shortest Dragon Ball series ever made. And it's actually has its benefits, as it is very high quality in its animation. There's nothing that even comes this close. There was a lot of budget shots in a lot of things in Z and original Dragon Ball and in Super, and we know those scenes, what we're talking about here. There was a lot of that stuff going on, and yes, there were great shots also in those original shows, but Daima just has a very high consistency from start to finish, and you can definitely see that in the latter parts of the episodes, on the fights, on the sceneries. It's just extremely detailed when it comes to the backgrounds and the characters and how the characters look. Now, in terms of the OST, I would have to say it's pretty lackluster. I never heralded Dragon Ball soundtracks as the high standard of OSTs. They always had a couple of good tracks. Super had the Ultra Instinct theme, and Z had the Cell theme and a couple of other good tracks. The original Dragon Ball, it was pretty horrible, I'm not gonna lie. I'm just recently watched it. I did not like that OST at all. But here, nothing really worthwhile to say about the OST, but I do like the opening song, which was a pretty cool mashup between Chakan and the Zed song. So that was a very interesting thing, and it's so encompassing the world of Daima. It's a mysterious song, and it's kind of upbeat at the same time. It's just it's just going through emotions in terms of its tunes. So I do like this opening. It's probably one of the best that they have ever done. So this was pretty good. Now, there's obviously new characters also introduced as they're going into the demon world, and these are kind of the focal points of the story. We have the new Demon King Gomah, and we have his minions who are a bit more on the sidelines, and then we have Arinsu, who is relative of Supreme Kai, which also serving as a secondary villain. And then we have Goku's new friends, which are Panzy, who is this sort of, new lolicon character basically in the story. And then we have Glorio, who is this kind of a mysterious guy who shows up on Earth and basically brings Goku along in the demon world. And honestly, a lot of these new characters are not fully explored. Panzy is the only character that gets a bit of a flushing out, has a bit of a backstory and a bit of her own arc within this small 20 episode series. So she's probably the most developed side character in the show, and in terms of having an actual story and background, this probably comes the best. Now let's get into this very big spoiler territory in terms of the story. I'm going to give you very honestly about how I feel about it. So first of all, there seems to be this big consensus among the community that Toriyama fully oversaw the production of Daima. But there's no evidence that this actually happened. So Daima started out basically in Q4 of 2024. He died on March. He went to surgery in February, which means that he probably didn't work after the surgery at all in any capacity. He was resting, and then he would just basically die on March. I think this is the scenario. Maybe even before the surgery on January, December, and on 2023, he was also taking massive amounts of breaks and maybe doing some, thing with his body to prepare for the surgery. So this idea that he was there from start to finish to design all the characters, all the story, and everything like that, I think is a silly assumption. I don't think he actually oversaw the ending of the series, and I think that is clearly shown on the quality of the latter half of this series. We could say that, okay, maybe that was Toriyama's work, but we don't know 100%. Was he really there to write off the very ending of this story? Did he have a lot more stories to tell in this demon world? Was it originally meant to be longer or something like that? So there's a clear quality drop, in my opinion, in terms of the story and the world building on the latter half of this story, which would maybe indicate that Toriyama was not as involved with the latter parts of the story as he was with the beginning of the story. But that is my, theory. You can leave yours down below. Now, as I already alluded, Daima, I think, starts out pretty strong. The first half, it has a big focus on world building, introducing new characters, and I was legitimately interested in to the demon world and its kind of like overall lore, these new creatures, these new habits, the bugs that they were eating. Like, that was interesting, that was cool. The fights weren't amazing in the beginning, but they were not really the big focus. But I think I would even argue that the best fight in the story is between Goku and Glorio. That was like the most coolest thing in the whole series, not the fights at the end, in my opinion. And also the latter half was like more massive build up into this final fight. I think it had a lot more filler. I don't think the final fight should have lasted that long in terms of episodes. I think it just had a lot of that stuff that just didn't really need to be there. In that sense, the series could have been like 16 or 18 episodes. And this even could have been wrapped up into a 2-hour movie even, but they would have had to skip a bit too much of that world building, which I wouldn't have liked. So I'm kind of glad that they didn't go with the movie route. But, I think the latter half I just had too much of nonsense. Honestly, I wasn't enjoying it as much, but I have to say that the ending of the last episode, that the last half of the last episode was pretty good though. So they did end up on a high note, even though the remaining last episodes were really uninteresting and a bit creatively bankrupt. As some of you already know, they brought Super Saiyan 4 twice in a row, which was kind of like lame writing in my opinion. Like, he shouldn't have transformed into Super Saiyan 4 as a kid. He should have just transformed into some other thing, like maybe the giant ape or something like that, I don't know, but bringing the Super Saiyan 4 twice in a row was like really, really bad writing. And I even think that Toriyama wouldn't be that bad of a writer. I mean, he has his own, writing plot holes and all that in the past, but like, he wouldn't probably done that as that badly. But that's my 2 cents. Also, there were some other issues here. For example, Piccolo was brought into along with this strip. And in terms of like character polling, I think he's like the 6th or 5th most popular character. But people also like Trunks and Gohan a lot. Like, why those two were not brought? Okay, maybe they're too young to be brought up on the journey, I guess. But fundamentally, like, honestly, Piccolo really didn't have much to do here. He had no personal fights in the story. And he had his time to shine on the last fight, and he totally failed. And yes, he had these interactions with Neva, but those convos could have been had with Supreme Kai and Neva also, or Dende for that matter. So him being there had really no impact on the story. And a lot of people have different feels about like which Z character should be featured in general. Like when it came to the Tournament of Power in Dragon Ball Super, people were saying like, what if Jamsa would have been there, or Taiyatsu? Like, people have these differing opinions which character should be highlighted more out of the good guys and who should be fighting. So people have differing opinions about that. I do like Piccolo. I think he's one of the better characters in the whole series in terms of its development and all that, but he had no role to play in the story. Supreme Kai is another one that was there as a bit of like a guide, as he was originally from the demon world, but like that we already had Glorio as the guide in this world, so it was kind of irrelevant to bring him along. But obviously Supreme Kai was a major force entity in the whole Buu saga, so in that sense it made sense to bring him along. But he also was playing like the secondary tour guide there, but he didn't need to be there as Glorio was already there. So that was also another one that was kind of weird. Then we had Glorio, which is probably the coolest character design in the whole new series. The problem with him is that he didn't have a proper backstory, and him feeling guilty about almost betraying his friends was like, oh, there was like so bad writing. Like, I was thinking like maybe Arinsu was like blackmailing him. That would have been a good storyline, but they didn't do that. So this is another example of like poor storytelling, and I felt like something might have been changed in the story on the last minutes, or Toriyama didn't oversee how this plot twist would have been come to be. So this was also another big mess on Daima. And what else do we have? And yeah, we talked about already the continuity with Super. I think there are a lot of things like Super Saiyan 4, which kind of contradicts that continuity there very, very much. And then there's like things like, oh, we have these fusion bugs, which they talk about. Was this also another storyline that was not explored? People were theorizing that Goku and Vegeta would be fusing, or Ku and Do would be basically fusing with each other. Was this a bait by Toriyama, or was this a storyline that was not fully fleshed or idealized eventually in the story? Was there a plan to make Daima to be a 30-episode series and a lot of things were cut out because Toriyama died, or what is going on here? We may never know. But there's also people yapping about season 2, and in all honesty, there isn't just enough story to go around for that stuff. I mean, I guess they could do some type of a sequel movie which would take place in the demon world again, like maybe the previous demon king before Dabura would be brought back, but that wouldn't be super interesting, as it would be kind of a rehash of the same plot line. But fundamentally, like, the world of demon world is interesting. But I think because we didn't have enough time, with Toriyama's death, like, we didn't get to explore much as we probably could have. And I think all of the plot lines were really explored in this time, and there was nothing really left uncertain or left into question in terms of the story. So overall, I think Daima was decent, especially on the first half where I was really into it. But when this came into the conclusion and the last fights, those were really bad. The writing fell off, and the fights were not really enticing. They didn't feel high stakes. And that's the problem with prequels and sequels in general, that if the timelines are set up that way, they don't feel like very realistic. That could somebody actually die? No, nobody was expecting anybody to die. So that's kind of like, there was not enough stakes like there was in Z, and we have never really went back into the same serious stakes that were in the Z. Z was something that was very serious out of all of these Dragon Ball shows, and I wish we would go back into something like that, not more of this like original Dragon Ball silliness. But that's basically my 2 cents. In case you're seeing the series as well, leave your comments down below what you thought about it. I would love to hear about it. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.